Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, if you're a business who's struggling, how do you know when it's time to bring in a coach? We'll have that next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show. Well, if you're feeling under the weather, you go to a doctor. But if you're a CEO and your company is getting sick, how do you know when it's time to bring in a coach? To talk about that today, Shelli Howlett and Eric Strafel, they're with Summit. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
You bet. Well, before we get into the nitty-gritty of when to hire a coach and how do you know if your company is sick, let's talk a little bit about your journey. How did you two meet?
Well, after I sold my company 2 years ago, I took off a lot of time to rejuvenate, do some business studies, and then of course I had about 8 fabulous trips, which were amazing. So if a friend calls or texts and says, mansion on cliff, Costa Rica, remember, say yes.
Yes, awesome.
It's always a winner. So aside from that, I really stayed connected to the local business community with the Dallas, the Plano Chamber of Commerce, Chairman's Council level, and of course the Women's President's Organization, which I've been a member of for 8 years. So a year ago, I was at the local chapter meeting, and we have some incredible speakers that come in, and Eric was one of the speakers.
And you guys instantly hit it off?
So I went in to talk about our programming, and my goal was to connect with people and understand what the opportunities are and challenges with your business. And Shelli came up to me afterwards. We talked a little bit, then followed up where she gave me some feedback on the program, which is what I was looking for, and we just kept the conversation going from there.
Absolutely. I want to talk more about your journey, and then we're going to really get into the nuts and bolts of when to hire a coach. I'm talking to 2 really business icons. Shelli, we've got some pictures of you speaking for many years. You led B&I in Dallas.
Fort Worth.
Yep.
Austin.
I mean,
and San Antonio.
That's a big territory. That's a lot of people. And B&I is really one of the most prestigious networking groups in the country.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a great journey. I met tens of thousands of small business owners, and then it was time to make a departure and move on to the next level.
And one of the things I love about this is there are so many coaches who never ran a business, and it feels almost like a professor teaching you how to run your business, but they've never actually run one themselves. Let's talk more about you, Eric. You're the author of a best-selling book. It's called The Frontline CEO.
Yeah.
Tell us about the book.
Yeah, so the book is about a new leadership style where I had worked up at every level of a company up to CEO. And what I realized when I got there with information technology these days, you have to really make decisions and empower your workforce to move as fast as you need to stay competitive. And so that philosophy of leadership is different. It kind of turns the traditional hierarchy on its head. And I wanted to talk about what that looks like for leaders coming into an organization. And I came in, I thought I had to fit a mold of this leadership style from 20 years ago when I came up through the ranks. And it just doesn't look like that today. And so I wanted to talk about, here's some ways to think about leadership differently that's more engaging, more authentic, more transparent, and you actually push decisions down instead of have them float up.
And you do quite a bit of public speaking. We've got some images of you out and about. Tell us, when you're invited to speak, for the most part, what are you teaching?
It's usually either about growth, whether that be personal or business, and that relates to mindset and strategy if it's a business. and then leadership and personal development if it's personal. And so I've done a lot of that on my own. And so I've got a lot of scars and lessons learned of what works and what doesn't. I've had a lot of great mentors over the years, worked with a lot of great companies and role models. And so I've picked up a lot of lessons and put that into, books and programs and things that I want to get out and share.
Absolutely. And I think your timing for this company is so unique because we're dealing with some headwinds, the great resignation and, keeping employees in place, keeping them happy. Let's talk about, I have to believe that one of the reasons people bring you in is there's churning. It's a revolving door.
Yeah. Leadership, when you start a company, so a lot of people can help you from 0 to 1. We're the 1 to 10. When you have to start building repeatable processes and hiring other people to lead teams and really drive employee engagement, and then that turns into shaping your culture. And you have to do that really intentionally because that's what keeps employees around. And then you have to invest in not just your company growth, you have to invest in your people as well. So that's what we talk about and turned into our program.
What happens when the problem is the CEO?
We are always the problem at some point, which requires the CEO to reflect. Once in a while, you have to take a step back. That's a great question. And be willing to say, you know what, I made a mistake. And if you say that, then it opens up the door for other people to admit that too. And then that's how you create a learning organization. I will say it's hard because the thought is that a CEO has to have all the answers. And that's just not the case, and it's, I would say, nearly impossible these days. The problems are just too big and complex, the world's moving too fast, and the workforce is more informed than ever, so you gotta pull them in.
Tell us, what does Shelli bring to the organization?
So Shelli had an amazing network of small businesses and ran her own business, right, which is so understands the issues and the opportunities as well as anybody that I came across. And I know that because she gave me feedback on the workbook, and it was extremely thoughtful, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, Shelli gets it and would be a great addition to the company. Brings a network. I've worked mostly in bigger companies. Shelli has worked largely in small and mid-sized companies. So together we cover a broader network of businesses and issues and combined perspectives that can really hopefully make a bigger impact.
What are some other reasons people bring you in? Shelli, I'll let you take that.
Well, I think companies get stuck. Or they get too comfortable, they're like, well, I hit 5 million revenue, I like this, the money's good, we're pretty organized and, things are on a roll, I can take off a certain amount of time, and then they just become complacent, I think. So we help them get unstuck.
Yeah, and I think you'll agree with this, Eric, that often what happens inside companies is, you've got this great salesperson, and so you say, we're going to make this salesperson the leader of the department. But they don't send them to school, they don't teach them anything about leadership, and then they end up like destroying the division. Yeah,
the various numbers out there, but what I've largely seen is about 80% of leaders in small businesses have had zero leadership training. Right, and so we hope to bring some of that, and it's not classroom training. It is field tested training, which is all the experience over the years. And so we bring in other people too. We have advisors, and depending on the type of company, we'll bring in people that are a match for what we think are going to make the biggest impact, and share real experiences, what works, and oftentimes what's more impactful, what doesn't work. And try to give people some insights on the people with repetitions of how to lead.
And I know anytime I worked at Fox 4 and we had consultants come in, and sometimes people were rolling their eyes, oh gosh, another person who doesn't really know what we're doing, and now we're going to have to come up with their list of recommendations. How do you what's your coaching style? How do you integrate and make sure that there's buy-in?
Yeah, I'd say it's discovery driven for one. So we aren't giving answers, we're asking good questions. And so and usually it may start with the CEO, but we try to bring in the team if people are open to that, because it is all about a team. So ask good questions, try to get insights about the business and where people want to go, set a target, build a plan to get there, and then that's step one. Step two is then go implement that. And where I've used a lot of consultants in the past that will provide a great strategy playbook, but then you're off to go implement that, and you have all kinds of gaps in capability and capacity. Nobody's got the time and focus, and so we continue on most of the time with people that come into our program to help them execute that. And we plug the gaps where we need to plug the gaps.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about networking because you're such an expert on this, Shelli. Especially for people in business development, it's important for them to get out from behind the computer. You can't do everything on Zoom, can you?
Absolutely. What I teach people is start to build a lifelong network. Even if you're earlier in your career, you need to go out and join some organizations and different ones too. And, even though you're tired, at the end of the day, still going to that extra event in the evening like you did recently,
right.
Even though you had the other early mornings coming up behind you. So it's just, nobody else can do it for you. You have to do it yourself.
And they always say that Gen Zs and some millennials to that extent are like a texting generation and not a talking generation. But it's so important to sharpen those people skills, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Eric, what have you observed?
Yeah, I still think you need some face-to-face engagement to build trust. It's hard to, once you have established trust, you can work with somebody, but to initially build trust, you really have to get engaged and be able to read body language and get to know people in a work setting and outside of a work setting. And that's how, I resonate so well with Shelli's networking and all the amazing things she's done over the years, because those sustaining relationships have a level of trust that it just takes years to develop. And it'll be there forever.
Outstanding. We only have a little time left, so let's give you both kind of a final word. Shelli, what would you like to leave the audience with?
Well, I'm passionate about helping small business owners. I have been for over 20 years in my past career, and I wanted to continue that journey. And I think working with larger businesses, say companies at 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, in my arena especially, I really would be excited to see them scale and gain 30%. And it's about the end game too. Where do you want to end up? If you're selling your company later, what do you want that to be worth?
Absolutely. Eric, final thoughts.
Yeah, same. If you've hit a plateau and you want to bring purpose and passion along with profits into your business, that's what we want to do. And we want to be very inclusive as we do that. So part of our mission is to try to change the economic landscape and make it more inclusive for 5 million and up, which diversity for women-owned businesses and people of color drops like a rock. And so we want to change that by helping everybody to scale a business and create opportunities and be more purpose-driven, and which I think will create a better economy for my kids in the future, which is where it started.
Outstanding. We're going to end with the website, and this is not a typo, right? It's pronounced Summit, but you put a 7.
Yes.
Okay, tell us about the 7.
The 7 is the tallest peaks on every continent and bringing the world together. And so we were inspired to summit, which is a verb. So find your peak and go after that, pick your peak. And then over time, we aspire to, be global and bring the world together. And so it's the tallest peak on every continent. And we thought about programming based on those, Mount Kilimanjaro or Mount Everest or whatever that might be. But yeah, that's where it came from.
Outstanding. Well, thank you for both coming on the show, and I appreciate your words of wisdom.
Thank you.
And that's it for now. We'll see you next time.